Nikon's 200 to 500 millimeter f5.6e telephoto zoom has quickly gained a reputation for having outstanding vibration reduction. How good is it? Well, stay with me and let's talk about that. Hello and welcome to 5-Minute Photo. I'm Bill Ferris. In this video, I'd like to talk with you about the vibration reduction of Nikon's 200 to 500 millimeter f5.6e telephoto zoom lens. Now, Nikon markets this lens as having vibration reduction that's the equivalent of up to 4.5 stops. What exactly does that mean? Well, it's long been an accepted truism in photography that to get a sharp handheld exposure, you should shoot using a shutter speed that's no slower than the inverse of the focal length of the lens. And so if you're shooting at 500 millimeters with this lens, then your slowest shutter speed should be 1/500th of a second in order to get an acceptably sharp handheld exposure. And vibration reduction is a technology that compensates for that natural bit of instability in your handhold to allow you to shoot at slower shutter speeds. And this is particularly helpful if you're shooting in low light situations. For instance, when doing wildlife photography where at sunrise or at sunset when the animals might be more active and there's less light to work with, that's when you want to be out making your photographs. Well, in vibration reduction, one stop would equate to essentially halving that shutter speed. In other words, if I'm able to make a good exposure at 1/500th second, then one stop of vibration reduction, allowing me to get a sharp image, at one stop slower would be at 1/250th of a second. Two stops would be at 1/25th of a second, 3 stops at 1/60th of a second, 4 stops at 1/30th of a second, and anything below 1/30th of a second would get into that 4.5 stop range that Nikon markets as the effective range for the vibration reduction of this lens. To test this, I used my favorite model, my hula dancer toy, set that up on a tray table, and then I shot handheld using my Nikon D60 and this lens, making exposures at different apertures which forced the camera to take longer exposures, to use slower shutter speeds to make properly exposed images. Now I shot both handheld without vibration reduction on, handheld with vibration reduction engaged in the sports mode, and handheld with vibration reduction on in the normal mode. So let's take a look at those images and I'll let you decide for yourself what you think the effectiveness of, well, shooting handheld as well as with vibration reduction on. We'll start with some handheld images and we'll begin with that 1/252nd exposure, 1/250th of a second, and let's take a look at a 100% crop. Now we'll go to 1/125th of a second, and again that 100% crop, 1/60th of a second, and a 100% crop, and 1/30th of a second, and a 100% crop. Okay, so those are the handheld exposures, and I should let you know that I try to use the best handheld technique that I know of, and that is I was seated and I had my right hand on the camera body with my forefinger on the shutter release button. My left hand was supporting the lens, and I had the elbows for both arms resting on my thighs to give myself as much stability as possible. And now we'll take a look at, from that seated position, the vibration reduction starting with sports mode. And again, here's that 1/250th of a second exposure, and it's 100% crop. 1/125th of a second, and a 100% view. 1/60th of a second, and the crop. And 1/30th of a second. That's 4 stops of vibration reduction, and its crop. Okay, as I mentioned, I also shot in normal mode, and let's take a look at those images. Starting with 1/250th of a second, handheld, with vibration reduction engaged, and its crop. Again, this is normal mode, 1/125th of a second, and a 100% crop. 1/60th of a second, its crop, and 1/30th of a second. Let's go right to that 100% crop. And then finally, for my testing, I decided to shoot from a standing position, where I'm standing and I'm just using my hands and arms to support the lens and camera body, not using my thighs or anything else to support the arms. So again, we'll start with the handheld exposures with vibration reduction off. We'll go straight to those 100% crops, starting with 1/250th of a second. Again, handheld, no vibration reduction. 1/125th of a second, 1/60th of a second, and 1/30th of a second. So those are the handheld no vibration reduction shots. Let's take a look at vibration reduction engaged in the sports mode. 1/250th of a second. Again, we're going to go straight to those 100% crops, next to 1/125th of a second. 1/60th of a second, and 1/30th of a second. Okay, so you can compare those, and now let's take a look at the images made with vibration reduction on in the normal mode. Starting again with the 100% crop at 1/250th of a second, and 1/125th, 1/60th, and finally 1/30th. So there you have it. Shots taken with the Nikon 200-500mm lens at 500 millimeters, and handheld with vibration reduction off and with vibration reduction on in the lens's two modes. And just as a general observation, I will say this: if you're able to use a solid platform seated with your elbows on your thighs, or using something else to support those arms, it's impressive to me that you can actually get some pretty decent exposures, breaking that, or exceeding, I should say, that traditional rule of the inverse of the focal length. Some of those images taken at the slower shutter speeds without vibration reduction, I think, would be perfectly suitable, say, for a website display. Well, thank you for watching. I'll see you again next time on 5 Minute Photo.